Welcome to our digital viewers as we watch today's King's Birthday Parade from Horse Guards in the heart of London, as the Household Division's troops now take their position for a parade that the King will receive his salute at 11 o'clock. And the mass bands are forming up. They have brought the troops in one large column from Wellington Barracks. There are 6 guards taking part in today's parade, and they represent 4 of the 5 regiments of foot guards. But today's big day is for the escort for the colour, who today are formed by No. 7 Company of the Coldstream Guards. And this is the 375th year that they are celebrating from their formation at the instructions of Oliver Cromwell back in the time of the English Civil War. And the band of the Welsh Guards, marked by their plumes of white and green, which were the colours of the Tudor family, who were kings of England and who brought those colours, and they, after all, came from Wales. And with the mass bands now fully formed, under the direction of the senior drum major of the Household Division. Welcome to Horse Guards Parade in the heart of London, where you are watching the King's Birthday Parade 2025. His Majesty the King with the Queen will come here to Horse Guards at exactly 11 o'clock, where the King will receive the first of 2 birthday salutes. And the colour of No. 7 Company, the 2nd Battalion Coldstream Guards, will be trooped past all those gathered here. At the moment, we're about to see the great L shape formed by the troops who have marched on from Wellington Barracks. Closest to us is the escort for the colour. They will be playing that prominent role in today's Trooping the Colour. And recalling the days of the battles that Wellington led against Napoleon, you'll see the movement of these troops very similar to that of the parade grounds of those battles, but under the direction of the non-commissioned officers and finally of those in command. The 6 guards will be forming the L shape, which will be the key to this parade. The dressing being led by the non-commissioned officers, as you can hear, but the scene we've got there of the old Admiralty building in the distance, the red brick with the white pillars, and then on the right, Horse Guards building itself, which used to be the main entrance to the Royal Park and to where the King once lived at St James's Palace. And it will be there, looking straight out at the Guards Memorial, with the 4 statues to the Grenadiers, Coldstreams, the Scots, the Irish and the Welsh Guards, each with their wreaths, and pockmarked by the bombs of the Blitz. And it was the direct instruction of Winston Churchill that they were not to be repaired, to remind the people of London and of the United Kingdom how close they came to danger. when they fought against Nazi Germany in the Second World War. During the Second World War, this parade was halted, but it came back very soon afterwards. Going from left to right, the Grenadiers, the Scots, the Welsh. And there, the inscription above, reflecting on the great loss of life of the First World War, to which was added the names of the Second World War. And we can see over at Horse Guards Parade the white saluting base, which the King will come to later on, and the officers commanding in front of their individual guards, waiting for the instruction for them to be put into the L shape of this parade ground. Each of the guards has 3 officers, a captain, a subaltern, and an ensign. And the single ensign we'll be watching today will be the ensign who will be carrying the colour when it is trooped. He is wearing a white sash down to the bottom left of our shot there, right in front of the escort for the colour. He's right in the middle. And he was mentioned yesterday by the King when the new colour was presented to the Coldstream Guards by His Majesty as Colonel-in-Chief. And so for young Lieutenant Max Martin, the ensign, this will be a big day, a responsibility to be carrying the colour of the Coldstream Guards, the King's colour, when they pass by the King to give salute. The King's Troop Royal Horse Artillery, who will fire the gun salute of 41 guns to mark the King's birthday at 10 to 1 today. They will be in Green Park, close to Buckingham Palace, where the King will be waiting to come out on the balcony at the end of this parade. And in the centre of the parade itself, the field officer in brigade waiting on his horse, Lieutenant Colonel Storm Green, will give the words of command to form the L shape. All the drill movements precisely executed in accordance with the massive training. And having formed the L shape, we can see the 6 guards forming the frame of this parade square. And there will now be some ferocious dressing, which is where the non-commissioned officers shout at the members of each line, telling them to dress forward a bit, dress back a bit, stand still, and then once they're all ready, they'll be given an eyes front. The weather's great in London today, but it's warm, and let's remember quite how tough it can be for some of these guardsmen out in the sun. It's a long day, and the tunic that they wear is lined, designed, I suppose, for those battles when it was the only clothing they had, and they're all wearing the bearskin caps. They're basically a very light wicker basket shape over which is stretched the the skin of the male bear for the soldiers and the female bear for the officers, which is, you'll notice, slightly taller. They're the officers at the front, who are also holding their swords to their lips as they also are dressed in line to make sure that when the king and queen comes, the lines are perfect. And when they do get the eyes front, we'll see a ripple of heads turning to the front. Grenadiers there, waiting for the next instruction later on. There are, as I say, 6 guards here. First, or the escort for the colour, formed today by number 7 company, 2nd Battalion Coldstream Guards that they represent. The 2nd Guard by the King's Company, 1st Battalion Grenadier Guards. The 3rd Guard from Nijmegen Company, also representing the traditions of the 3rd Battalion Grenadier Guards. Then Inkerman Company, and then numbers 9 and 12 companies of the Irish Guards, and then F Company Scots Guards, number 6. So a large proportion of the Guard get a chance to stand at ease. Meanwhile, number 3 Guard will open up shortly in order that the first carriages of members of the royal family who will be leaving Buckingham Palace come to view the ceremony from the Major General's office, which is over the Arch of Horse Guards. And in those 2 barouches will be coming the Duchess of Edinburgh with Vice Admiral Sir Tim Lawrence, and in the 2nd barouche, the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester. We'll see that middle guard open now. Again, the manoeuvres are reminiscent of the Napoleonic Wars and the movements, not least of the great squares that were used for all-round defence by Wellington. Meanwhile, at Buckingham Palace, waiting for the carriage processions to move off, and we're seeing the first one coming now to leave by the centre gate from the quadrangle across the forecourt, and there is the Duchess of Edinburgh, whose husband, the Duke of Edinburgh, is Colonel Scots Guards, and she's travelling with Admiral Sir Tim Lawrence, whose wife, the Princess Royal, is Colonel of the Blues and Royals, and today she's acting as gold stick in waiting to the King, responsible for his personal protection, a tradition that goes back to the 1600s. And there'll be a royal salute. And you can see the black armbands that the King has instructed should be worn today. These 2 barouches, bringing members of the royal family, as I say, who will be witnessing the parade, and coming out just before the King and Queen and the Princess of Wales follow in a carriage procession that will be escorted by the Sovereign's escort of the Household Cavalry. and in the second barouche, the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester. Passing by the Queen Victoria Memorial and then making their way down the Mall all the way to that opening now in number 3 guard for them to pass through, where they'll receive another royal salute of 6 bars of the national anthem, and then they will pass underneath the arch, and there they will alight and join other members of the royal family in the Duke of Wellington's old office, which is now used by the Major General commanding the Household Division, which got the most marvellous view over Horse Guards today for this parade. There, the Household Cavalry Band, wearing their gold coats. The state dress of these gold coats and black velvet riding hats were funded by the City of London after the restoration of the monarchy in 1660. And as a result, not only do they wear the state coats for members of the royal family, and of course for the King today, but also for the Lord Mayor of London. And with this light breeze, a relief really for most of those soldiers taking part. And again, bear in mind those guardsmen who've taken position on Horse Guards, they're going to be standing pretty much in one place until they get a chance to march past in slow and quick time quite far into this parade. What we're seeing are the divisions of Sovereign's Escort who will be leading the King's procession, 1st and 2nd Division being formed today by the Blues and Royals. They wear blue tunics underneath their metal cuirasses, and they have red plumes from their helmets, which were designed by Prince Albert, Prince Consort to Queen Victoria. And the 3rd and 4th Division of the Sovereign's Escort formed today by the Life Guards. They wear red tunics and have white plumes from their helmets. But imagine for each of these troopers who have to guide their horse using their legs and holding one stirrup, their boots are absolutely solid and take about 25 hours of preparation when first worn in and polished with beeswax. Down the Mall, the Duchess of Edinburgh there, the crowds have the chance of hiding underneath the canopy of these green trees because the sun can get quite warm, and in the Mall it certainly heats up, but a chance to see all of this parade as the procession makes its way down. And now the King as Colonel-in-Chief of the Coldstream Guards, travelling with Her Majesty the Queen, Colonel of the Grenadier Guards, and followed in a carriage by the Princess of Wales, Colonel of the Irish Guards, will receive a royal salute as they leave Buckingham Palace. The King and Queen in the Ascot Landau. The King wearing the uniform of Colonel-in-Chief of the Coldstream Guards, who will be trooping the colour that the King gave them yesterday at a parade in Windsor Castle. And there he referred to the great history of the Coldstream Guards, who were created part of the household division by King Charles II. So King Charles III presented new colours. And the King and Queen are followed by the 3 royal colonels riding today. The Prince of Wales as Colonel of the Welsh Guards, the Duke of Edinburgh, Colonel Scots Guards, and the Princess Royal, Colonel Blues and Royals. Meanwhile, arriving at Horse Guards, the Duchess of Edinburgh and Sir Tim Lawrence, as they turn into Horse Guards itself and through number 3 guard, the field officer and brigade waiting will call for a royal salute. We saw the front of the Household Cavalry Band, while the royal family now head underneath Horse Guards Arch and will alight and head upstairs to where those red balcony canopies are laid out over the balustrade for members of the royal family to witness this annual pageantry, which marks for the United Kingdom the National Day. Members of the crowd, there are huge competitions to get selected for tickets here. Most of them are representatives of diplomatic organisations or of the regiments taking part, and there is a public ballot for guests to be fortunate enough to get tickets. But for most of the public, the best way to watch it, of course, is on Sky News, or if you manage to watch the processions go past on the Mall. And from Buckingham Palace, the state standard of the King, His Majesty having recently left the palace to make his way now along the Mall with the Sovereign's escort, who are leading the King's procession. There are 4 squadrons of the Sovereign's escort, 4 divisions, and each of them has a responsibility for protecting the security of the King. And at some occasions in the past, they have followed their drills at falling back and forward in order to surround the royal carriage. But not today. It's a glorious summer's day in the United Kingdom. And while around the world there are challenges that face world peace and are being addressed by the leaders of the world, it is a reminder that each of these soldiers you'll see today is trained to deliver calculated, precise, and legal violence against the King's enemies, if instructed so to do by the government of the day. And as the division of the Sovereign's escort passes by from the Blues and Royals, with a salute from the streetliners today, shortly after that will come the King. Meanwhile, this is the parade that he will come to, and the King, who is making his way, will pass by our camera shortly, along with, behind him, following in the carriage, the 3 other royal colonels who will be riding, and also in the second carriage, the Princess of Wales as Colonel Irish Guards. Last year, the Irish Guards trooped their colour, and it was a very poignant moment when the Princess of Wales, as Colonel, came to witness that moment. It was after a considerable period of cancer treatment that she had faced, and so it was splendid to see her here last year and here a year on. And for the King, too, a year of continuing treatment for his cancer diagnosis. And we can see there the Queen and the King in the carriage. And immediately behind them, we can see the Prince of Wales, the Duke of Edinburgh, and the Princess Royal. And we'll return to see the Princess of Wales in due course. There's the King. You can see on the collar of his jacket the Star of the Garter, which is the badge of the Coldstream Guards. The founder of the regiment, General Monk, was made a Knight of the Garter by King Charles II. And in his forage cap too is the Star of the Garter. And he'll be wearing buttons in twos, as indeed the Coldstream Guards always wear buttons in twos, and he had around his left arm a black armband. And the parade waits for the arrival not only of the first two divisions of the Sovereign's escort, but also to see the members of the royal family there with the Princess of Wales. Princess of Wales, who is Colonel of the Irish Guards. And a wonderful sight with the Union flags all the way down. And the 1st Battalion, Welsh Guards, Scots Guards, just trying to see who I can identify, are lining the route here with a salute to the arriving procession. And leading the procession, we have at the front there the Brigade Major, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Foynette. His responsibility is to deliver the King's procession precisely at the right time here at Horse Guards. And the Household Cavalry will play Pavan the Town, which was composed by Wing Commander Rob Whiffin from the Aylesbury Dances, and this will be played to bring His Majesty into Horse Guards Approach Road and onto Horse Guards itself. The Household Cavalry will then place themselves underneath those trees to the right of our shot earlier on, and the King will pass beside number 6 Guard and make his way to the saluting place where he will stop to receive the national anthem. But on his way, he will pass the colour that is to be trooped today, which is currently waiting to be collected on the parade square itself. The intention of the Brigade Major, who is leading the procession, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Foynette, is to deliver the King precisely to the saluting base underneath Horse Guards Arch as the clock strikes 11. And then the King will receive a royal salute and a present arms from all the guards present. Let's listen to the music and enjoy the arrival of His Majesty, and let's look out also for when he salutes as he passes the colour that we see there in our screens, being held by the Colour Sergeant, ready to play its prominent part in today's parade. And you'll notice the flags of the Commonwealth that the King passed by there on Horse Guards Approach Road. I can see Canada to the left there. Other nations of which the King is head of state, as Prince George and Prince Louis travel with their mother, Princess of Wales, and sister, Princess Charlotte. The Household Cavalry Mounted Band, having played the music on the way up the mile with the 4 divisions of the Sovereign's escort, will place themselves underneath the trees to the left of that picture as the king will pass by, and along the back of the far guard, around the edge of Horse Guards, and to the centre where Horse Guards building is placed. Horse Guards building was completed in 1725 to a design by the great architect Adams, and it used to mark the entrance point to the Royal Park. And the clock from which the bells will sound at 11 o'clock is marked with a black pointer at exactly the point at which King Charles I was executed on the face of its clock. And the Sovereign's escort continues to place itself under the trees. Meanwhile, to our right, the King's carriage passes by the colour to be trooped and will give a salute, as will the 3 royal colonels as they pass at the back of that colour. And a royal salute on the King's arrival has been given by the field officer and brigade waiting, and all the troops hold out their rifles and swords as if to offer them to the King. The King returning the salute he's been given here at the start of his birthday parade on Horse Guards. And as the bells sound, it is 11 o'clock. You're watching Sky News and the King's birthday parade here at Horse Guards. Glorious weather, a light breeze. The sun is making sure that all the work that the Guardsmen and troopers have put into their leather and into their buttons glint for the King and Queen as they now form the inspection. First of all, the slow inspection of the line, and music arranged by Major Justin Tegerty, current Director of Music of the band of the Coldstream Guards, Bonnie Tyneside. Let's listen. And the king and queen looking straight into the eyes of the guardsmen, non-commissioned officers and officers of number 6 Guard, the Scots Guards, and a salute given now by the carriage and by the king to the colour that shortly will be trooped. The king will turn and now have a chance to inspect the sovereign's escort, the household cavalry, and also the king's troop with the guns that will fire later on today. And as they do so, we will move on to the quick inspection of the line. And for this, we'll have the music of The King's Guard by John Henry Keith, who served as a bandsman in the 2nd Battalion, the Rifle Brigade, in 1885. This music was composed in 1904 and dedicated to Edward VII. And there are the 3 royal colonels behind the king, of the Prince of Wales, the Duke of Edinburgh, and the Princess Royal, who are saluting the sovereign standard of the household cavalry. They're then going to turn back towards Horse Guards building. And shortly, the atmosphere will change from this moment of celebration of the United Kingdom and of the King's official birthday, as when the King returns to Horse Guards and takes his position on the saluting base, there will then come the 1-minute silence to reflect upon the great tragedy of the Boeing 787 Dreamliner flown by Air India, which crashed, taking the lives of 242 people. And we can reflect upon all those whose lives were lost, but particularly those from the United Kingdom and those relations of those in the United Kingdom, and wherever you are around the world, if you have been affected by this event, it is for this reason that the King has given instruction that a 1-minute silence will be held here at Horse Guards, for which everyone will stand, and you may notice that all the officers and those taking part in the royal procession are wearing their black armbands. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, think of the tragedy and those who lost their lives.
There will now be a minute of silence to remember those who lost their lives and those affected by the Indian airplane disaster. Would you please stand?
At the conclusion of the 1 minute silence, we now move on with the troupe, the mass bands troupe, which will begin with the age-old tune, Les Huguenots. And led by Senior Drum Major, Warrant Officer Second Class Gareth Chambers of the Irish Guards. The other drum majors with their maces lead the mass bands in this slow march. the traditional tune, Les Huguenots, which has been played every year at the birthday parade since 1936. And it has been used on numerous occasions before that, way back to 1869. And it tests the abilities of these musicians to the very highest standards. And we enjoy their music as they play. We now move into the quick troop, and special music has been composed for this special Coldstream Guards Day to acknowledge the Garrison Sergeant Major. It's called The Garrison, and it's full of bold themes, and very much like the Garrison Sergeant Major himself, who we've come to know at all the great ceremonial occasions, Warrant Officer First Class Vern Stokes, who we'll see later on. But this music, an accolade to him. Let's enjoy it. And one drummer has just taken his position from the band to the right of the escort for the colour. And at the end of the quick troop, he will play a drum roll, which is the word of command for the major commanding, the captain of the escort for the colour, to hand over to the subaltern, who will then go and collect the colour in order for it to be trooped. And what better salute to Garrison Sergeant Major Vern Stokes than that music played here on this glorious sunny day, where the Coldstream Guards, his regiment, celebrate their 375th anniversary. And the drummer, having performed that very special task, wearing himself the red plume of the Coldstream Guards, returns to the mass bands. And meanwhile, the subaltern of the escort for the colour is preparing the escort for the colour to march forward and go and collect the colour, which, as you can see, is on the far side of the parade ground, and you have the mass bands in the way. What we're going to see is what Garrison Sergeant Major Vern Stokes is most proud of, is we're going to watch the spin wheel as the band moves through 90 degrees to get out of the way. Meanwhile, the escort for the colour will move forward to collect that colour and take it for the troop. We'll watch that take place now. And for the escort for the colour, the subaltern is waiting for the right-hand marker to shout, "Right, sir," and then he knows they're all in line, and he'll give the word of command, "Quick march," and march straight towards the colour of the regiment. And there you are, the route is clear for them. And then our eyes will move to the ensign wearing the white cross belt, who will march forward with the regimental sergeant major, Warrant Officer Class 1 Andrew Fleming. The only time a warrant officer has a drawn sword on parade, the regimental sergeant major at the back of the escort for the colour will go round to the left, pick up the ensign and go and collect the colour. First of all, as always, they will dress, line up, make sure that they're properly dressed off. For this, the highest compliment they can receive, to take possession of the colour of their regiment. The colour represents the soul of the regiment. And for the regimental sergeant major, just there on the right of the shot, with his drawn sword, waiting for the signal to come forward and collect the ensign. Here he goes, after a career of service that began in 2003, when as an 18-year-old, he left Buckinghamshire to join the Coldstream Guards. He has been overseeing the training of the ensign, Lieutenant Max Martin, who's 24, and who the King mentioned yesterday in his speech when he presented this colour to the regiment. First of all, the regimental sergeant major will salute the colour and he'll sheath his sword. Actually, he'll keep hold of it as he steps forward to collect the colour. The colour sergeant, who's played an important role, standing stationary there, holding the colour of the 2nd Battalion Coldstream Guards. The ensign now salutes, and he replaces his sword. He has to find the little opening of the scabbard, guide the point into it, and then drive it home. When he takes possession of the colour and turns, there will be a national anthem as Number 7 Company, Coldstream Guards, salutes their colour. The ensign now with the colour and with the regimental sergeant major now taking his post. The subaltern will give the command to start trooping the colour, and they will then move in order to pass all the way through numbers 6 to number 2 guard and to return to their place at the right of the line closest to our cameras. And all the time, it gives the guardsmen the chance to see the colour, to recognise it, and to know where it's stored. It's a tradition that goes back to the battles of the older times. And yet, still today, the colour represents the soul of the regiment and is still given the highest honour. And this is it. The escort to the colour, as they are now, will first of all troop past F Company Scots Guards. And today is an important anniversary for the Scots Guards. 43 years ago today, on the 14th of June 1982, the Falklands War ended. And the 2nd Battalion Scots Guards, who are represented by F Company today, had completed their battle. I want to refer to an event that I should be at today, which is at Salachy, on the shores of Loch Shin, up in the northern county of Sutherland in Scotland. And there, the Highlands and Islands branch of the Scots Guards are gathering to remember a soldier who I built a cairn to there. He was called Guardsman Jim Reynolds. He looked after me in 13 Platoon, 2nd Battalion Scots Guards, and he was killed assisting a wounded comrade. He'd already, at the age of 19, fought personally to disable 2 machine gun positions, and he was given the Distinguished Conduct Medal. And for those gathered at Salachy today, who I should be with, our thoughts as the colour of the Coldstream Guards passes by F Company Scots Guards. And we were looking there at George, who is the horse being ridden by the Field Officer and Brigade Waiting, Lieutenant Colonel Storm Green, who's in command today. He joined the Coldstream Guards and probably never thought he'd have to ride a horse, and yet here he is in command of the King's birthday parade. Well done, George. And that great wide shot as the troop continues, the colour coming past all those who are on parade today. The colour itself is marked with the 8-pointed silver star, surrounded by the garter and ensigned by the Royal Crown. It has the Union flag in the upper hoist, and across it the battle honours of the Coldstream Guards going back to Tangier in the 1600s, and the most recent being the Gulf War. And across it, events like Waterloo, the First and Second World War, years of service, 375 in fact, being celebrated today as the music plays and the colour of the 2nd Battalion, carried by Number 7 Company, the Coldstream Guards, returns to its position on this parade ground. And the escort to the colour returns to its position, will advance and will present arms. The parade will now shoulder arms. And they will prepare the parade for the march past in slow and quick time. First of all, The escort for the colour opens up to allow the colour to come through the centre and takes its position at the rear, thereby, yet again, fully protected by those soldiers present. And when they form divisions, which will be when they come out of the L shape, we will see them form their 6 guards again. And during that, the music will be played by the corps of drums of the 1st Battalion Grenadier Guards, The Girl I Left Behind Me. And now they'll about turn and face us. Number 6 Guard needs to be given separate instructions in order for the march past in slow time to begin. And now what they've been practicing for months. Each of these guards will now show their best to the King as a salute on his birthday. And the music for the slow march is By Land and Sea. It was written in 1941 by former Army and Royal Marines bandmaster, and it reflects the motto of the Royal Marines. And the armed forces are all remembered today in their salute to the King. And that motto is Per mare per terram, by land and sea. Charles III, after all, our King, served in the Royal Navy for much of his service time. And it's fascinating to see how each of these guards wait until each of them is in the right position before the word is given from the right-hand marker, right, sir, and then they move forward just a section. And somehow it all works. No one crashes, and the right distance is kept between each of the guards. We can see the escort to the colour at the front there, approaching Horse Guards. It's got one more corner to turn, and the colour needs to be brought to the front in order for a flourish as it passes the king, and we'll get a chance to see the colour, its battle honours, and it is the best of the salutes to the king today on his official birthday. And there on the golden scrolls were all the battle honours that have been earned over these 375 years. Well, a representative number of them. Overall, there were 113 battle honours earned, and of those, 44 are stitched into the colour that will be lowered in front of the king. And the field officer and brigade waiting, riding George, moving forward in order to take part in the salute as they pass His Majesty. The salute will be for the king, and beside him will be the Queen and the Princess of Wales, two colonels of his foot guards, and they will stand at the required time to receive that salute and return it. The field officer and brigade waiting is waiting for the word of command to step forward because he can't see behind him, and that will come from the sergeant to the right of the escort to the colour. Shout, "Right, sir," and on they go for the salute to the king on his birthday. And immediately following those horses will come the colour. And the field officer will peel off to take position beside the royal colonels until this march past in slow time is complete. And meanwhile, the Coldstream slow march is played, Figaro by Mozart. And number 2 guard, marching past the king, is his own company, the king's company. He is the company commander. And they salute with the Grenadier Guards slow march, Scipio by George Frederick Handel. There always used to be a measuring stick to join King's Company of the 1st Battalion Grenadier Guards. It started at 6 foot and went up to 8'4". And below 6 foot, written in paint, it just said, "Sorry." They are the tallest of the guardsmen in the Grenadier Guards. and the Irish Guards. Let Erin remember. And finally, as F Company Scots Guards go past His Majesty in salute, the garb of Old Gaul. On the King's shoulder, the cipher of the late Queen, to whom he was a personal aide-de-camp, and he continues to wear E2R. In respect of his late mother. The field officer and brigade waiting will now come forward, salute the King, and get permission to move from slow time into quick time. You'll see his salute in a moment. And the music. Coburg. Again, composition by Johann Haydn. We're going through all the great composers and echoes the traditions that were brought into the British Army when the Hanoverians became kings in the 18th century. Now he'll give the word of command to break into quick time. This is done when the music goes quiet. You'll hear the field officer shout, break into quick time. And then you can count 1, 2, 3, 4. And then he'll say, quick march. And the speed will pick up. And for those guardsmen, they can swing their arms. And there's nothing like breaking into quick time to cheer the soldiers, get their bloodstreams running, get those arms swinging. And let us remember that these soldiers got up particularly early this morning. They probably all went for a run. It's traditional to go for some PT on the morning of a big parade. and they will have returned, showered, prepared their kit, much of it prepared the day before, and then been on parade some time ago in order to take part in this parade. So it's a very long day, and of course for the escort to the colour, who are turning now again close to where they started not long ago, they will go on after this parade to become the Royal Guard at Buckingham Palace and at St James's Palace. So their 24 hours of guard duty will begin later on today. They've got a very long day to go yet, but they're carrying with them the colour of the battalion, and for any soldier, nothing could be more of an honour. And the reason everyone stands is because when the colour comes past, it is a sign of respect. And another chance for all 6 guards to march past in quick time past the King. And the quick march is Northumbrian Airs, written by Lieutenant Colonel Trevor Sharp. And we're seeing the same situation again as they prepare to march past the King in quick time to give an eyes right in salute, all those soldiers, whilst holding their dressing, and the words, "Right, sir," have been given. And on goes the salute. The second nod is the salute. And there we go. The King saluted for the second time in quick time by his foot guards. When King Charles II instructed the Coldstream Guards to become his second regiment of foot, they complained. They said they weren't second to anyone. They'd been founded before the first regiment of foot. And they took on the motto, Nullae Secundis, second to none. As the guards formed by the Grenadiers march past the King in salute, we hear the British Grenadiers again. And then we'll move on to St Patrick's Day for the Irish Guards. And finally, Heel and Laddie for F Company, Scots Guards, marking today the 43rd anniversary of the day the Falklands War ended. And the 2nd Battalion Scots Guards completed their fighting to liberate the Falkland Islands. And for those in the Falkland Islands watching us, enjoy your Liberation Day today. again, we see the colour being carried there, and on it is one of the battle honours, the Mareth Line. And this music is named after the Tunisian campaign where the Mareth Line was defended in its battle in March 1943. The battalion, the 3rd Battalion Coldstream Guards, suffered terrible casualties and it had to withdraw, but Company Sergeant Major Peter Wright of that battalion won the Victoria Cross, and it is remembered in this special day of celebration of Coldstream Guards history. And congratulations to the grooms for preparing those horses' hooves for this parade, and all those who look after the horses. There'll be 200 on parade today and nearly 1,000 troops taking part. And now we'll see them reform the L shape, just like in the Napoleonic times. This is what Napoleon feared. And that concludes the march past in slow and quick time by the foot guards. And the massed bands will now clear the centre of horse guards as the parade ground is handed over now to the Household Cavalry and to the King's Troop, Royal Horse Artillery. First of all, the band will march away and the corps of drums will play Lily Borello by Carson as they march out to the side. And there is the commanding officer at the centre of the mass bands. He has commanded them and brought them to this point. It's 12 o'clock. You're watching Sky News, and the King's birthday parade is taking place at Horse Guards in London. And we are about to see the walk and trot past by the King's Troop Royal Horse Artillery, followed by the Household Cavalry, as the two drum horses come forward to lead this pace. You've got Juno and Apollo, and today they both carry the rank of Major, as always happens on parade. And so that's Major Juno and Major Apollo. And they take their place at the front of the Household Cavalry Band. And today that band is led by Major Craig Bywater. Those kettle drums are 60 kilograms the pair. Major Apollo's carrying drums given in 1805 by King George III, and Major Juno a set given in 1830 by King William IV. Salute to the King from the King's Troop Royal Horse Artillery. A subsection with the lighter horses all the way back to F subsection, who have the darkest of the horses. And these guns that have known much history right back to the time of the Boer War and who fired during the First World War, they will be firing blank rounds later today. 41 guns will be fired to mark the King's official birthday, and they'll be fired at 10 to 1 as they salute the King and he salutes them in return. The guns are the colours of the Royal Artillery and the King's Troop Royal Horse Artillery in particular. And we've been enjoying the Royal Artillery Slow March, sometimes referred to as the Duchess of Kent's March, after the composer, who was the then Duchess of Kent, as the Household Cavalry come past and the Blues and Royals lower their sovereign standard. And beside the King will be the Princess Royal, who is Colonel. Blues and Royals, and it is the Blue and Royals who are passing the King now in salute, and they'll be followed by the Life Guards. And the regimental walk march of the Life Guards and the Blues and Royals played, as the Blues and Royals now turn. They're now going to go from the walk to the trot. And when the word of command for the trot is given, it'll be given by one of the trumpeters. Because, of course, the noise of these horses' hooves, very difficult to hear orders any other way. And the King's troop are passing the King now, as following on behind come the Blues and Royals, passing by the crowds there out into Green Park and St James's Park. The position of this camera we have at the moment is very close to the statue of Lord Mountbatten of Burma, who was Colonel of the Life Guards. And the Life Guards pass by now, and the only time an Admiral of the Fleet has been Colonel of the Life Guards, the senior regiment of the British Army. Meanwhile, coming past to salute the King, the Blues and Royals. The two divisions of the Blues and Royals, followed by the two divisions of the Life Guards. And for the troopers who will return after having had a very long day already, they got up early to feed the horses and exercise them and prepare the saddlery and all other accoutrements. And when they get back to Knightsbridge after the parade today, they once again need to put their uniforms away, take the saddles off, clean them, set them aside for the next parade, and make sure that their horses are watered and given food again, and then put to their beds. A long day for the Household Cavalry. As now the mounted band salutes the King with that famous salute from the drum horses Apollo and Juno. And if we can move in close now towards the King, you will see to the King's left are the three royal colonels. And just to the right of where the King's sitting are the three other colonels. And there you can see the Princess Royal on the left as Colonel Blues and Royals. She's had the pleasure of seeing them march. When you see she's holding the gold stick today, which is the office she alternates with the Colonel of the Life Guards. Beside her, to the right, is the Duke of Edinburgh, Colonel of the Scots Guards, and to his right, the Prince of Wales. And then the Queen as Colonel Grenadier Guards, and to the right of the King, the Princess Royal, Colonel Irish Guards. All the royal family, with behind them the other colonels, who are not members of the royal family, and the Major General commanding the Household Division, with his cocked hat and white feathers, watching all this parade as it now begins to fold into the preparation for the final royal salute. The final salute of this King's Birthday Parade 2025. There's now a process of preparing the King's Foot Guards in order to march back to their duties down at Buckingham Palace. And following King George V's decision in 1913, the King himself will lead his troops. And this emphasises his role as Colonel-in-Chief, but also on this official birthday to demonstrate that he is Commander-in-Chief of all the armed forces. And there is the colour that has been trooped and which was given to the regiment only yesterday at Windsor Castle by the King. Meanwhile, the troops themselves are doing their dressing in preparation to reform the 6 guards so that they can march away. The Household Cavalry Band is meanwhile positioning itself in Horse Guards Approach Road, but they have to wait for other members of the royal family who are watching from the window of the Major General's office, who need to drive down the Mall back to Buckingham Palace. Meanwhile, coming down the Mall are the guns, who will take their position in Green Park. They will remove the gun from the limber. The horses will then be trotted away, often cantered away to a safe distance. And then the soldiers who will fire the guns are in position, the gunners, to then fire 41 guns. That's 21 as a royal salute and an extra 20 guns because it is a royal park. This now is, for the King, a reflection on the parade. He will later today, when he's about to come out onto the balcony with other members of the royal family, he will have a chance to speak to the field officer in brigade waiting, who is commanding this parade, and will give his own views of what he thought of it. And then, in due course, a message will be sent to the Major General commanding the Household Division and to all those who took part, and express the King's gratitude for the parade. Meanwhile, the first 2 divisions of the Sovereign's escort move also to Horse Guards Approach Road, followed by the 3rd and 4th divisions. And the positioning of the soldiers now ready with F Company coming closer, and you'll see the repositioning for the march away almost complete. When it's done, the field officer in brigade waiting, riding George, will turn and go up to the king and ask his permission to march the king's troops back to duty. Colour markers all in position to enable the troops marching away to find their route. And the field officer in brigade waiting now turns and comes across the parade ground, and he will ask the king for permission to march to their duties. For the field officer in brigade waiting, who has been preparing for this for months now, Lieutenant Colonel Storm Green will request that permission. And the King has given that permission, and for that field officer, what a tremendous feeling at the end of the King's birthday parade, the third of His Majesty's reign. And it's been wonderful weather. There were threats that it would rain, and last year it rained so badly there was actually a storm on the route home. None of that today for everybody gathered in London. And he'll give the word of command to their duties. Quick march. He will, of course, be waiting for the signal from the Garrison Sergeant Major that the route is clear. You can see the marks of the bombs and shrapnel all over that memorial. Once the Garrison Sergeant Major is certain that all members of the royal family have gone down past Horse Guards Approach Road, he will give a salute signal from the right-hand corner of the parade ground. And the instruction, first of all, come to attention, and then to quick march back to barracks. And they will turn a circle, and the King will lead them in his carriage with the Queen and the Princess of Wales and all the royal colonels back to Buckingham Palace, where, again, there will be a small march past to conclude the day. But of course, as I was telling you, the escort to the colour will take on a 24-hour duty of Royal Guard at Buckingham Palace, protecting the palace and Clarence House and St James's Palace. The King's got quite a week coming up. He has presented colours yesterday to the Coldstream Guards. He has, of course, his birthday parade today. And then on Monday, it's the service of the Order of the Garter, the order, the badge of which he is wearing now because it's carried by the Coldstream Guards. And then on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday and Saturday, the King and Queen will be travelling in that carriage to the racing at Ascot. Royal Ascot begins on Tuesday until Saturday. And throughout that process, the King will be kept informed by the Prime Minister and his ministers of issues particularly associating to the situation around the world. So let's watch the King lead his troops to their duties back at Buckingham Palace at the conclusion of this King's birthday parade. And the march off is being accompanied by the music Army of the Nile. And this was chosen by the Colonel of Coldstream Guards, Lieutenant General Sir James Bucknell. It's his favourite march. And it's performed here in reference to the regiment's battle honour. You might have seen a small sphinx shown. This represents Egypt, and to the 3rd Battalion after their service in Egypt in the North African campaign during World War II. It's a long salute for the streetliners who've been waiting patiently during the parade, where their fellow guards have been performing on horse guards. They've been waiting here to hold the ground for the return of the king. And the parade turning into the mile from Horse Guards Approach Road there as the king leads his troops. And following them, the non-royal colonels, and that includes the regimental colonel, Coldstream Guards, and the Major General and his retinue. And plenty of applause for those who've taken part by the large quantity of people watching from the stands. In that corner, mostly they are from embassies, the defence attaches of different nations who have their embassies here in London. They all are invited to witness this event. And you now see the troops forming up who are going to cross the parade looking for medals that may have fallen, or bayonets, or any bits of military equipment that need to be picked up. And during a parade like this, very often things like that do happen, as the street liners salute their king. And just behind the king, you can see the Field Officer and Brigade waiting on his horse, following. There's the Prince of Wales with the Field Officer and Brigade waiting, and after the king has passed, the streetliners shoulder arms, and the Princess of Wales with her 3 children, Prince George, Prince Louis, and Princess Charlotte. Elizabeth II always insisted that women in carriages look forwards because it was easier on their hats and hair, and the men have to head backwards. That's slightly more difficult. And following up at the rear of the procession, the car from the Royal Mews, just in case, and the carriages should have a problem. And already you see the troops being led by the king back to their duties. The Grenadier Guards here. Grenadier Guards have a white plume in the left-hand side of their bearskins. Coldstream Guardsmen there. The Grenadier Guards have single-place buttons with a white plume. The Coldstream Guards, as we've seen today, buttons in 2s with a red plume. Scots Guards, buttons in 3s, no plume. Irish Guards, buttons in 4s. St Patrick's blue plume, and finally the Welsh Guards, buttons in 5s and a white and green plume. It's been a great wait for all those here. I hope they've enjoyed the parade. You couldn't have more music or more troops, and perhaps a chance to review the pictures they've got. And the Major General with his retinue, including the Chief of Staff to the Major General, Lieutenant or Colonel Guy Stone, whose brother works with Sky News, Mark Stone, out in the United States. We always give a call out for Guy, who is the Chief of Staff heading down the Mall. But at the front of that procession, and we'll hear the music pick up as they arrive back towards Buckingham Palace, the mass bands of the Household Division with the 4 drum majors, with their senior drum major, making 5 in all. Let's enjoy the music. Daniel Fairley of the Coldstream Guards there, sending some messages on to the others. They could just hear each other even in front of this music, but all 5 of them across the front, with the senior drum major there in the middle giving the instructions. That's Warrant Officer Second Class Gareth Chambers, the Irish Guards. And going quiet for a moment as the corps of drums from the 1st Battalion Grenadier Guards pick up the duties of playing. And now with the duties of street lining over, all the street liners will reform and they will march away to Wellington Barracks. And as quick as they can, those who are responsible for ensuring that the crowd can come up to Buckingham Palace, the police will come forward and enable the process to be managed very carefully down to Buckingham Palace. But there you see the Princess of Wales's carriage and the retinue of the others as the King leads his troops to Buckingham Palace and to their duties. And for the escort to the colour, a responsibility to take on the Royal Guard. As we come out, we'll see the canopy of trees in St James's Park. You can see the King's house there to the right, where he spends most of his time at Clarence House, and also Marlborough House and St James's Palace. And at the end of the Mall, Buckingham Palace. Off to the right of Buckingham Palace is the Green Park, where the guns will now be forming up to fire the gun salute for the King later on. But there is the King leading his troops to their duties after the birthday parade. Meanwhile, the Royal Standard flying over Buckingham Palace. It's the State Standard, 36 feet long and blowing in the wind. And shortly, the royal family will be out on the balcony to watch the King as he takes his final review of the troops as they return to their barracks. And London is bathed in sunlight on a day that rain was threatened, but none of it in sight today. The special oxide that's mixed with the tarmac to make the red appearance of a carpet of route. There's the Chief of the Defence Staff, Admiral Sir Tony Radakin, with his guests from different NATO countries. Admiral Sir Tony Radakin wearing the naval uniform. He is obviously the King's senior service person, and all those guests of the Chief of the Defence Staff being given the chance to make their way down the route before the police close it. It's a great sight. Down to the Victoria Memorial, known as the Wedding Cake, and the palace and its garden beyond. But it's been an interesting ceremony today, perfectly executed by those servicemen of the Household Division who took part, and other members of the Ministry of Defence being led down, including those who will get a chance to watch the events take place at Buckingham Palace. But it's been a chance for the King to change tradition with a reference to something that has happened before, a moment of silence to reflect upon the real tragedy of what took place to so many people in India when an aircraft coming here to the United Kingdom, people coming to return to families or to visit families or to come on holiday, who lost their lives in such an awful air crash. And for the King, it was important that his officers wore black armbands and silence was held. When the King returns to Buckingham Palace, he'll be taken into the North Centre Gate, that's the one to the right there, and he will then go to the Centre Gate. And meanwhile, behind him, the escort to the colour, carrying the colour, will follow him in through the North Centre Gate in order to take part in a changing the guard ceremony later on, when the King has disappeared from the balcony later on. And he will be followed into the forecourt of Buckingham Palace by his brother, his sister, and his son and his daughter-in-law, and they will take a final salute at the centre gate of Buckingham Palace before they go up to the balcony. And the mass bands move into the area in front of Canada Gate. Around the Victoria Memorial, there's Canada Gate, South Africa Gate, which looks down towards the Mall, and then Australia and New Zealand gates, which head off towards Victoria and St James's. The King turning into his position. And there is the saluting base that he will use. And taking positions either side of the saluting base will be the Royal Colonels. The Prince of Wales and the Duke of Edinburgh are accomplished horsemen. The Prince of Wales, a polo player, and the Duke of Edinburgh has always taken every opportunity to ride, encouraged by his late mother and father. Receiving the salute of other members of the royal family as the Princess Royal and the Field Officer Brigade waiting with the Princess of Wales and her children going past their grandfather. And the two colonels of other regiments, the Life Guards and the Coldstream Guards, salute the King and the Major General too. Major General James Bowder, who's been responsible for preparing this parade. King has never worn the Coldstream Guards uniform before today, so as its Colonel-in-Chief taking the salute for the last time, as first past him will be his own company, of which he is company commander, the King's Company of the 1st Battalion of the Grenadier Guards, who've been forming number 2 guard at today's parade. And here they pass. You can see the escort to the colour now in the forecourt, waiting to take over the Royal Guard. As number 2 guard passes by the King in salute, they're his company, and the person who commands the company is known as the captain. And number 3 guard, formed by 9 Maygun Company, saluting the King for the last time as they go to Wellington Barracks to dismount and either head to duties or perhaps, who knows, a weekend off. Number 4 guard, while the royal family look on, Inkerman Company of the Grenadier Guards. We see the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester, Duchess of Edinburgh, I think the Duke of Kent, who was Colonel Scott's Guard. This really is a family occasion for the King. It's an event that he remembers his mother attending every year as sovereign, and now he has, for 3 years, received his birthday salute as King. Also, the Princess Royal's husband, Sir Tim Lawrence, watching from the centre room of the balcony. And finally, the retinue of the Household Division, including the Chief of Staff, Colonel Guy Stone. And finally, the retinue at the back with the Brigade Major taking final salute of the King after completing this parade. The King will remain and take the salute of the Household Cavalry as they too head off to barracks in the different direction. They go to Knightsbridge Barracks, where these 200 horses, or nearly 200, who've been on parade, will be put back into the stables. And there's plenty of work for the musicians and for those who've been involved in trooping to complete this parade. The King waits now for those Household Cavalry divisions who, first of all, escorted him to the parade ground and then came back in order to say thank you in this rank past. King's Troop Royal Horse Artillery now taking their guns to Green Park, just to the right of Buckingham Palace as we look, and there they'll set up ready for the 41 gun salute, which will be fired in just over 10 minutes. And behind the king, in the forecourt, you can see just to the right of the central path, the escort to the colour, who've just so brilliantly trooped their colour, waiting to take over from on the left-hand side of that central path, the existing Royal Guard, who are about to dismount. That will take place later on. Meanwhile, after the King's troop have completed their salute, first the Blues and Royals, and then the Life Guards will salute their Colonel-in-Chief as they return to barracks. And while this is going on, coming to watch the balcony arrival, you've got plenty of people who've been either watching or taking part. You've got troops, you've got the scouts all coming up to pretty much where the king is now. So there needs to be some quick manoeuvring, and the troops will leave very quickly, and then we'll see from this helicopter position the public who have been watching so patiently and taking part by being in the crowd today, making their way up from the stands in Horse Guards to, it's quite a long distance up the Mall, but there are plenty of police to help everybody get up there safely. And they'll get a chance to see the royal family on the balcony leading up to the 1 o'clock flypast. The Royal Air Force always give a flypast at 1 o'clock, and at this moment they'll be gathering their aircraft in order to do that. And also Heathrow will have to make preparations for the alteration to the airspace for that period of the flypast. And finally, the band of the Household Cavalry with a salute from the 2 drum horses, Major Juno and Major Apollo, as those musicians who control their horses really by their feet and practice not only to be fine musicians but also extraordinary horsemen and women. The king returns to the carriage and will be taken to the door within the palace so that he can make his way upstairs to the centre room in order later on to appear on the balcony. The state standard is 36 feet long and taking the wind today on a temperate but wonderful summer's day in London. There's a royal salute for the king as he passes in front of the old and new guards. And members of the royal family will lower their heads in salute to the king as he passes under the balcony. The retinue of the Major General saluting the colour that we saw trooped earlier. Always, whenever there is a colour on parade, it is given the highest respect that any soldier can. They all return into the forecourt and from the forecourt into the quadrangle, where those who've been mounted will dismount. Great moment of relief for all of them. There's very often a photograph with the king and his colonels. Meanwhile, we look out to find the guns. Will be in Green Park, and we'll see them taking their position in due course. They have to get into the park. It's all been cleared. There's nobody sunbathing there for the moment. And it's always fired at Green Park because it's close enough for those at Buckingham Palace to hear the 41 guns. So the mass bands now leave. Let's enjoy the music as they go. But I think maybe they're going to go silently after all that has taken place, just to get out of the way now in order that the corralled crowd that's coming down at speed from the Admiralty Arch end can make their way. And they'll open all the barriers at the side of the Mall to let those who've been watching the parades come and make their way down to hear the police leading those who wish to come and watch the balcony appearance and enjoy the flypast. And for anyone who's been under a flypast, it's a great roar of engines and tremendous to see the aircraft go past, particularly the 9 Hawk T1s of the Red Arrows who fly past, and the moment they hit the Mall, they allow the exhaust of red, white and blue smoke out of the back of their aircrafts. And there are the guns ready with the limbers. They'll probably, knowing the King's Troop Royal Horse Artillery, they'll canter into position or even gallop if they've got the space. But first of all, they're just preparing everything. And the flag flies. The Royal Standard represents the 3 Lions of England, the Lion Rampant of Scotland, and the Harp of the Kings of Ireland. And the Scouts and Guides coming forwards. I'm a very proud ambassador of Hampshire Scouting, and it's amazing what the adult volunteers do to ensure that young people get a chance to come to events like this and take part and have memories. So the guns have been disconnected from the limbers. These are the horses kept in the waiting area away from the guns, because when the guns fire, they're kept at a safe distance. And a chance for them to rest. We'll see if we can find the gun line, which will be closer to Buckingham Palace. And ready to fire, maybe covered up by the canopy of trees. As you can imagine, there are plenty of safety requirements to make sure that the guns are fired safely. Meanwhile, inside the palace, the Corps of Drums, Grenadier Guards, who've played quite often during today's troop, taking their position ready for the King's appearance on the balcony. So inside the quadrangle, the King will have had a photograph with the royal colonels of the regiments, all 7 of them. And that photograph will be released later, I'm sure. But today really has been a day for the Coldstream Guards, whose 2nd Battalion colour was trooped in front of the King. And whereas many nations, who particularly as republics celebrate their days of liberty or independence, the United Kingdom has been a monarchy on and off, although there was a period when it wasn't during Cromwell's time. It's been a monarchy for over 1,000 years. And so the National Day is the King's birthday parade, and it always sits on a Saturday. During the early part of the Queen's reign, it was moved to a Saturday because that disrupted the traffic of London less. It reduced the impact upon business that was carried out. And you see the police putting up the protection lines to point out where they need to stop the crowd so that the armed forces still have their exit route. Once the photograph's been taken inside the quadrangle, the King and members of the royal family will go up to the centre room, which is just behind those glass windows. And there will be a lot of lemon refresher, which is a very good lemony drink to try and recover after being in the sun and on parade and in those very, very heavy uniforms. And also for the troops who've taken part. Many of them will now have dismounted or will have been stood down, as we can hear the guns beginning to fire. And hidden by the trees, the 41 gun salute to mark the official birthday of His Majesty the King, and contiguous with this, a 62 gun salute at the Tower of London. I'm sorry we can't bring you a better picture of the guns themselves, but we can hear them. You'll see the public are kept at a distance from them. So 41 guns for this salute. That's 21 guns is the traditional royal salute, and an extra 20 guns because it's a royal park. Meanwhile, at the Tower of London, it's 62 guns, and that's 21 guns from the Tower, 20 guns because it's a royal fortress, and an extra 21 guns fired on behalf of the City of London. Not far away, and I think we're going to have a little journey there on this helicopter while we hear these guns fire. And I'll be really impressed if the helicopter can find the gun line, which is literally between the Tower of London itself and the river. And if they've got clearance to fly there, I'm sure they'll take us. We've got plenty of time, although we're keeping our eyes on the balcony in case the King appears. The Tower of London's just down there beyond those bridges. You can see the Tower Bridge just coming up to the right. And it's a wonderful sight over London, and it's in these skies that the aircraft are going to come shortly. And when they come, we will see them in various different groups. And if he's careful, we're looking right out there. That's. I think the red arrows will be some time yet. But there's some aircraft making their way. Good sighting. Those are the first 4 Chinooks in a box formation who will be over us at Buckingham Palace fairly shortly. And actually you can see the other aircraft, which I think is a Lancaster, with its wonderful low, deep roar that my mother's generation used to love seeing fly overhead as it set off on bombing missions to defeat Nazi Germany in the Second World War. Those are going to be 2 treasures for those waiting on the Mall to hear, and for the King, the Queen and the royal family, and particularly the young Princes George, Louis and Princess Charlotte. I think they'll absolutely love the flypast when it comes. Meanwhile, down at Queen Victoria Memorial, around the area in front of Buckingham Palace, the crowds are just being brought forward now by the police. We can still hear periodic firing of the guns, and plenty of people choose to stay in the Mall to enjoy this tremendous sight of the flypast. You can see it's a wonderful summer's day. Literally this time last year it was pouring with rain. Much of the final ceremony was curtailed by the rain, and so it's good to have the flypast back. I'm glad he brought his bicycle. And there's someone who's not going to bother. He's going to leave. Very sensible. Meanwhile, coming closer, they take their time. And the Royal Air Force are very clever at organising the various different groupings to make sure that they fly over in precisely the right order, timing, and with the right gap in between each part. Just so that you know, we'll have 4 Chinooks in the first group in the box formation, followed by the Lancaster from the Second World War. Then 1 Phenom and 2 Texans. Then 1 A400, 1 Voyager and 2 Typhoons. A P-8, a C-17 with 2 F-35s, 4 Typhoon, they'll make a roar, and then the Red Arrows. And there is a child with his flag. I don't think anyone could look smarter than that, and he is wearing Coldstream Guards uniform. I think he's got his red. Well done for the cameraman for finding that. What a day he'll have had. The gun's still firing. In order to get the number of guns right, there's a little leather wallet with 41 holes in it, and the colour sergeant places a pin through the hole each time the gun is fired. And that helps the commanding officer to know when the full number has been fired. Sometimes the guns don't fire, and so immediately the next gun has to fire, and they need to deal with the round that has failed to go off. But 41 rounds will be fired in salute to the King on his official birthday. The King will be on the balcony very shortly with the royal family. I can see a check being made by somebody on the left-hand side. And the first sign we'll get is when that centre door starts to rattle. You'll just see the footman responsible for opening it. You'll just see when their hands come up to hold the door handle that opens it. There's a little step just outside the door onto which the King will stand, and that brings him level with the balcony covering. Meanwhile, the helicopters are making their way. They're amazing aircraft. When I was in Iraq, I was frequently bussed around and remember flying over the marshes of Iraq. It was one of the greatest privileges of my life to see how beautiful the marshes of Iraq were. The King and Queen. It's 1 o'clock. You're watching Sky News as the King and Queen and the royal family have come to the balcony to watch the flypast on this, the King's official birthday. And the roar of the Lancaster bomber, which meant so much to the Second World War generation. And as the Phenom and 2 Texans fly over, a wonderful experience for those young members of the royal family. Each of these aircraft flying over with their salute from the Royal Air Force. And of course, we heard that marvellous music, Per Mare, Per Terram, earlier on. As the C-17, the Phenom and the 2 Texans fly over. It's quite difficult for the royal family to see the aeroplanes until they're quite close because of the Victoria Memorial directly ahead. And the Globemasters, which do so much of the heavy lifting for the armed forces around the world. Great throaty roar as it echoes on back into. And this C-17 with two F-35s either side. There's a Voyager with two Typhoon, keeping its wings safe. We're seeing these aircraft in different places, not necessarily as they fly across the palace, but listen to that sound of the Voyager's engines. And right out there, there's the P-8. Because of their different speeds, they all need to be kept carefully at controlled distances. And each of them has to peel away in order to get out of the flight path of Heathrow at different points and return to their bases. And following the P-8, you've got the C-17, followed by, or accompanied by, two F-35s. C-17 with two F-35 escorts. And that'll be a wonderful roar over the King and Queen and the royal family, and all those in the Mall enjoy it. And you see it swinging immediately off to the right to get out of the important flight path of Heathrow. The Typhoons are coming, 4 of them. They'll also rattle the window panes. Red arrows there. Exhaust fumes will shortly go red, white and blue in salute to the King on his official birthday. As they turn away, the King will wave from the balcony before he and the royal family will take the final royal salute. The King's birthday parade, with this balcony appearance by His Majesty the Queen also and other members of the royal family, concludes a ceremonial that has taken us back in natural history through our story, our nation, as we've seen the Coldstream Guards play their part and troop their colour. We've had that moment of silence to reflect upon the loss of life in the air crash in India. We've seen the King and Queen play their part as the heads of the nation on this very British occasion. And here we are at the conclusion of it, the most beautiful day. And let us not forget the motto of the Coldstream Guards, which is, they are second to none. Noli secundis.
Thank you.